feel like I'm learning so much, and like I say too, meeting people up.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? This is the Best of the Week, guys. We are here with Scott Baxendale. He's a legend in handmade guitar world. He's been doing this a long time. The work he does with his own stuff and harmony guitars has brought a new generation of people playing these old harmonies, and that's how I was introduced to you, and that's the reason I've been following you for however long I've been following you. So thank you so much for being with us, man. This is huge for us, for me especially.
Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me. So Scott, currently, you're looking back at your resume, right? You've been at Groon, you've owned Mossman, you were the owner of Colfax Guitars and now Baxendale Guitars, if I understand correctly. Can you kind of give people just a brief sort of overview of like your journey and how you sort of led to where you are now at Baxendale?
Sure. One funny story that I always tell is when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my dad was a pilot at the time, and so they would go out on weekends to bars or whatever, and he brought home a jazz band from the bar. I think he went to the Playboy Club in Kansas City and brought home the house band after hours. And so I was awakened at 3:00 in the morning with this jazz band playing in the basement. And that was sort of, I think, defined my fate at that moment when I was a young kid. And then when I was in the 3rd grade, when the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan, we started a band called the Shaggy Dogs. And none of us knew how to play guitars, but I made all these prop guitars in the garage with stuff out of my dad's construction materials and stuff. And I made these like heavy cardboard guitars with a piece of wood for the neck. And I used my mom's yarn for the strings and buttons for the knobs and stuff. And we made these guitars, and they were just fake prop guitars. But at the time when the Beatles first came out, they had Beatle wigs and Beatle boots and Beatle merch. They were one of the first bands with lots of merch. And so we had Beatle wigs and Beatle boots and these tight, skin-tight jeans. And we had these white T-shirts where this girl drew a picture of the Fred McMurray Shaggy Dog from the Disney movie that was out at the time. And we called ourselves the Shaggy Dogs, and we changed all the words to the Beatles songs to refer to dogs instead of girls. And so we sang, "I Want to Hold Your Paw." We sang, "Last night I said these words to my dog, ruff, 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 ruff." And so the teacher, we did it for our class, and the teacher loved it so much that she invited the principal down, and the principal came, and so the principal had us go to every class in the school and do our little set. And so that would be our first tour. And we were just singing a cappella and pretending to play these guitars we've already been playing. And then a decade later, I'm dropping out of college to go to work at Mossman Guitars. And so in 1974, I was into my sophomore year in college, and I had found out about this place called Mossman Guitars in Winfield, Kansas. And so I saw an article in the paper about their shop and about their mission. And Stuart had this. Turned out it was kind of BS, because he was just trying to gloss up his story, I guess. And in part of that article, he said he liked to hire inexperienced woodworkers because he didn't want them to come in with contrary methods. He wanted to teach his method. And so I bought right into that, immediately wrote a letter to him, said how I wanted to come work for you and all this. And so I got a job, and that's where I kind of got started. And that was in 1974. And so I went to work there. I soon became the head of the finish department when I first started. So I started in the finish department, which at the time seemed bad, because that was kind of the grunt job that everyone hated, because you had to do a lot of sanding and stuff, and everybody wanted to carve necks or do binding or do inlay and stuff like that. But I was pretty content just doing the finish, and ultimately, in the course of my career, that was really good, because fit and finish was always really easy for me, where that's always a struggle for a lot of young luthiers starting out, to get that fit and finish right, And so I was able to knock that out early on in my career. And so then I worked at Mossman Guitars. I dropped out. I was going to University of Kansas, and I went in 74, and I went to Mossman, and I worked there for about 3 years. And I was one of the assistant foremen when I left. And I had moved from the finish department by the time I'd left. I'd gone into final assembly and setup and adjustments, and I did buffing for a while. But until I owned the factory, I never did any of the actual constructing parts, outside of my own side projects. I never did it in terms of the factory. I learned all that after I bought the factory. And so I moved the factory to Dallas in 1985 and started the Mossman Guitar Company there. And my goal there was to try and, set the world on fire with all my great acoustic guitars. And I built about 250 guitars during that time, during those 5 years. And that was when I started getting into, getting guitars into the hands of sort of famous rock stars. And the first one of those was Greg Lake, and that was just sort of a happenstance. I had been working with Charlie's Guitar Shop in Dallas, and they called me up and said, "Hey, Greg Lake needs a guitar. What do you got? You want to show him one?" And so I was able to go down there, and he bought one of my first, custom guitars. Well, not one of my first ones, but he bought one of the first ones when I was manufacturing them. And from Greg Lake, we got our guitars into the hands of Carl Perkins and James Burton and Willie Nelson and Jorma Kalkinen and Travis Tritt and, quite a few people during that time. And, of course, Carl Perkins was my favorite. and Carl Perkins and James Burton, I should say. And then James Burton played the one I built for him. He played it in the Roy Orbison Black and White Nights video. So whenever he's playing acoustic guitar in that concert video, it's the one I built. And so it was really exciting that night when I didn't even know that he was playing it. I knew he had it, but I didn't know he was playing it. And then I was in a bar. I was in the Hard Rock Cafe, and that movie came up on TV. And I was just sitting in the bar, and all of a sudden my guitar was on the TV, and I freaked out. And I think that's sort of the same feeling musician, a rock star gets when their first song gets heard on the radio, when he hears it played on the radio the first time or something.
Sure.
It's kind of the same feeling, I think. So then I had Mossman for 5 years. At the end of that, I got really strung out on drugs, and everything kind of went to hell. And so I was out of the guitar world for a couple of years while I got my life together. And then after I got sober, I started back up in Colorado, and I started really slow, first doing repairs in a shop there, and then I worked at the Denver Folklore Center. And while I was working there, I started a little shop in my garage where I was building some custom guitars, but I was doing repairs at the Folklore Center. And then eventually that led to the Colfax Guitar Shop. I decided I wanted to move out on my own, and I got that shop just kind of on a string, man. I only had $1,500 available to start the shop, and I had some tools, and I just salvaged all these construction materials that for free. I tore down this room that this guy had in this building, and I used all the 2x4s and the plywood and stuff like that to build my workbenches and stuff. And so I recycled materials, so I did it really cheap. Yeah. And I was able to negotiate I negotiated a longer lease so that I could pay, and I negotiated the price so I could pay a lot less the first couple of years, and then I weighted it on the back end instead of just paying a month, so I negotiated that. And so my first 2 years, I only paid $500 a month rent. And so I was able to slowly get my shop going, just one guitar at a time, basically. Yeah. And then soon after that, a couple of years into that, my son decided he wanted to learn guitar work, and he started working for me. And that sort of led into the harmony conversion process. And so prior to that point, I was just doing repairs and building a few custom guitars. And so my son, he dropped out of college and went to work at this pizza place, and pretty soon was the manager of the pizza place. But then the owner sold out, and the new management came in and fired him. And he had worked for 3 years, building himself up and trying to work his way up. And he was devastated. So he came to me and said, "Hey, I want to learn guitars." Mm-hmm. And so I said, "Cool, come on, we're guitars." And we didn't really I wasn't really sure how to do that, but I had 2 or 3 old junker harmonies laying around, and I thought, well, heck, why don't we just take these apart and rebuild them? Because in the context of one guitar, you're doing a neck reset, you're doing a plane and refret, you're making a bridge, you're making a saddle, you're making a nut, you're doing the neck geometry and the intonation, as well as any structural repairs like cracks, etc. And since we're doing all that, why don't we just throw our bracing in it? Just to heck with it, just we're that far into it. Why don't we just put our bracing in it? Because it'll make it sound better. We didn't realize how much it would make it sound better at that time, but we knew it would sound somewhat better.
Yeah.
And I had heard of other people re-bracing harmonies before. It's not like I invented the whole idea to re-brace on harmony. That idea came to me from somebody else. Harry Fleshman was the first one I'd ever heard of doing it, and he was a luthier who taught, and part of his teaching, he would have guys X-brace them, But as I was teaching repairs, and so around this time I was like thinking about starting a luthier school, because I was going to teach people how to do repair with this method. I thought, well, heck, you take one guitar part and you're doing all these different tasks that are required as a repair guy, and especially the fact that neck resetting on acoustic guitars is always considered this kind of super mystical extra surgery that you don't get to learn until after you've learned everything else. And I flipped that around and started teaching that on day one instead of on day last. Yeah. Like at other luthier schools, that's the last thing you learn on the way out the door. I want to teach it as the first thing, because if you can make the whole neck setting and the neck geometry second nature to a guy, then all the other repair stuff really becomes a lot easier to handle. Because if you can make a guitar play really good, then that's 90% of the battle, especially with dealing with professional musicians, because most professional musicians don't care about the cosmetics too much. They care about how it plays, how it sounds, and if it's in tune, And so anyway, in the context of one guitar, you're doing all that. And so we build one guitar, and then that guitar's done, you build another. And so in a few months, you've done a dozen neck resets and a dozen refrets and a dozen bridges, and you figure that geometry out. And then setting guitars up becomes second nature. It's like riding a bicycle at that point. And so then you can refine all the finesse stuff, and what we've, learned is that taking the guitars apart is one of the hardest things, especially the mahogany guitars, because you can mangle up a mahogany back really easy trying to take it off. Yeah. And so we've developed techniques over the years to improve that. We're doing things completely different than we were doing like even 3 or 4 years ago in terms of our disassembly techniques. And also we've evolved it into more of an assembly line approach now, to where we have stations in our shop. So one station is where the guitars get disassembled, and then the guitar moves through the shop, as opposed to one guitar on a luthier's bench goes through the whole process. We have 7 guys or 5 guys right now, and so they'll spend a few days, and they'll take 20 guitars apart, and that's all they do for those until those 20 guitars are done, is take them apart. Then once those are apart, they'll clean them out, and then they'll do the structural stuff, then they'll do the bracing, so they go as a group. And so this group works on them, and then the guitars kind of go around. We have a setup area where the guitars go when they're getting set up, and so on. And that way, what that does is a couple of things. It allows us to really have good, consistent quality between all the guitars that we do. And it also allows us to, if we were to itemize each task that we do on a rebuild, like we do a neck set, we do a refret, we do crack repair, we replace the braces, we make a nut, we make a saddle. If we itemize out like a normal repair shop did, it would cost like $3,000 to get our
yeah, sure.
But because the way we do it in a more of an assembly line approach, we can bundle it all together, and so we can charge a flat rate. And so we charge like $1,200 and you're getting like $3,000 worth of work done on it if you were to go to a shop and have each one of those jobs done on your guitar, for instance. And by doing that helps us, because it allows us to price the guitars that's affordable, for one thing, and it's really important for me that our remanufactured guitars are in the same price point as the low-end Taylors and the high-end Blue Ridges, and the stuff that the average musician goes in and can afford, you know.
Sure.
The doctors and lawyers and the rich guys, they can buy my custom guitars all day long, you know, because they're the ones who can afford it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been the thing. And what started out as just a tool to teach luthier skills, because originally that's all it was. And then I didn't really think that much that we were going to turn it into a thing where we're selling hundreds of guitars, you know. I thought it was going to be a thing where I'm going to teach 20 or 30 or 50 luthiers how to work on guitars, and then they were going to go out and work in repair shops.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the guys that I taught are going out and doing conversions, and it's not doing that much repair, you know, so they're doing their own versions of it, you know, and so that's kind of a wrinkle that I didn't quite expect.
That's cool. So with that, I mean, it sounds like the conversions have been really, really good for your business. How big of a piece of your business is that overall right now?
It's all of it really right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's out as just a side thing with my custom guitars and repair being, you know, the predominant portion of my business.
Sure.
And for many years it was repair. Repair was like 80%, custom guitars would maybe be 30%, whatever.
Yeah.
And now it's 90% is the remanufactured guitars. We do them in batches of 24, and we're on pace to do around 300 this year.
Wow.
And we did 200 last year. Even with the COVID, we did somewhere close to 200. I'm not sure the exact number.
Yeah.
And so, and here's the nice thing about it is it's become a thing where everyone at every step in my process is happy and doing well. Like I have like 5 guys, and a couple of the guys are a lot more experienced than the other guys. I have a couple of new guys that I've just trained who are kind of fresh into it. But the thing is that it's a situation where we have 5 luthiers who, if they were out trying to get a job in the COVID world right now, would be struggling to get minimum wage. And they're all making 15 to 20 bucks an hour doing this work. And they all like the work, and they all get along good, and everybody's happy. And so what started out as this little thing to teach my son how to fix guitars is now supporting 5 families, you know, 5 or 6 families. And it's, that's pretty cool. I was thinking about that the other day, and I didn't realize how cool that was. And to me, that's like, and to go along with that, it's the greenest thing in guitars, because there's, you know, we're repurposing almost everything. The only thing that gets used new is a new piece of rosewood for the bridge. And that's really the only thing you could say, hey, that's not so green to do that. But we could easily switch to maple or walnut or something if we had to. You know, we're just using rosewood for tradition right now. Still available, still cheap enough that it makes sense, you know.
Right.
But so the green factor, the fact that we can price it where musicians can afford it, the fact that my luthiers can make a decent income doing work they like to do, you know, doing a job look forward to every day. That plus, and that's not even getting to how great they sound when they're done. You know, how incredible the guitars sound. So which is, to me, that's the big thing is how they sound.
Yeah. What was the thing that surprised you the most when you started getting into these, and the difference from, you know, the originals to after you remanufactured them?
I think, you know, starting out, we thought there was maybe 3 or 4 models that were suitable for doing this process, and that would be the Sovereigns and the H162s and the H165s. Yeah. We thought that was pretty much it, you know, and that we kind of stuck to those. And then when we started getting more demand than supply, we started doing other models just because we didn't have enough guitars. And then we realized even the cheap little 3/4 Stellas that sold for $12 new, that you see millions of those. Even those, they sound like Waterloos when they're done, you know, after we do them.
Wow.
And so the longer I do it, the more incredible and different array of models I'm finding. And even now I keep seeing models I've never seen before. And that's one of the things that's cool about Harmony over Gibson and Fender is there's so many odd, weird models and weird imprints on the headstocks and weird, you know, things. But they all kind of conform to this same frame, basically, you know, which allows us to do our remanufacturing process to them. And so models that we never even considered before, which I like seek out, are like the roundups from the 30s and the melody ranches. Yep. And these weird guitars made in the 40s and all these weird stencil guitars and stuff like that. So yeah, that's probably the big things. And realizing there's so many millions of guitars that they made out of Chicago from Harmony and Kay between 1930 and 1970. You know, there's I don't see us ever really running out of inventory.
No, I don't think so.
You know, I think the supply will be there at least well past my lifetime anyway.
People are finding those guitars in their attics, and they'll be finding them in their attics and their garages for years to come.
I know. And here's the interesting thing is during the COVID, I mean, people were just pulling them out of the closet right and left to send to us. I mean, I got into a jam at the end of the fall, or at the end of the summer, in the first part of the fall, where we had like 70 customer guitars in our queue at one time, and we had to really knuckle down and get those out, and we're just finishing those up right now. Yeah. You know, so those are that's cool. So the more that people know about us, the more they go, hey, I got this old Sovereign I played when I was a kid. Maybe I'll get it done. Or we get, hey, this was Dad's guitar, or this was Grandpa's guitar, and we want to keep it in the family, but we want to play it and use it. And that's nice to get those, you know, and have those come in. Absolutely. And now we have a few dealers that are selling our guitars too, and so we want to move more into having them available in different stores around the country, where you can just go in and buy one in a music store. And so we have a dealer in Telluride, and we have Thunder Road Music in Portland and Seattle, and then we have Stay Gold Music in Santa Fe. So that's who we have right now, and we're hoping to add to that list as we get more store inventory done.
Sure.
Through the COVID, we got jammed up on that aspect because of we had all those 70 customer guitars, and then I had the stores going, hey, we need to buy some guitars, but I had to get those guitars done first. And so now we're starting next week, actually starting tomorrow, they're going to start in a batch of store stock guitars that will be sent out to stores and stuff.
Awesome.
Purchase. Yeah.
Wonderful. So in addition to, your Harmony conversions, you're also very well known for some of your custom guitars that have, been in the hands of some people that I look up to, you know what I mean, from musicians. So what's that process like? If somebody wants to contact you for a custom guitar, how does that process work within your shop?
Well, they just call me and we figure out what they want, and I take a deposit and then I start the guitar. Honestly, in the last couple of years, the custom guitar thing has really taken a back seat.
Sure.
And I, like 3 years ago, I built like a dozen bodies and neck blanks and I put them aside. And I down to 2 of those now. I've got 2 of those left.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And so kind of what I do, if I'm going to say I'm going to build some custom guitars, or somebody orders a guitar.
Yeah.
Say you order a guitar for me, and I'm going to start a guitar for you, and we agree. I will go in, and rather than build one guitar, I will start and build like 4 or 5 guitars that are similar to that one. I'll at least 2 that are identical to that one, and that's in case something happens or I have some sort of weird setback. I have something to follow up on me, and it's almost easier once you get a setup done, like say you're going to bend the sides. Once you bend that first set of sides, it takes a lot less time to bend that second set of sides than it did to set all up and bend the first set of sides. So you can bend 3 or 4 sets of sides when you only need 1 set. Yeah. When you're making a neck blank, I'll make 3 or 4 neck blanks when I'm only going to make 1 because I got all the setups. Then when I have a bunch of parts, then I can say, okay, then a guy can come in and go, oh yeah, I want this guitar. Well, I've already got a body. How about this? And I'll tailor the neck. And so that way I can be a lot farther down the road and closer to the finish line with the customer when they lay their deposit down. Because the worst thing that can happen, and it happens to luthiers a lot, is they start taking deposits on guitars and they get too backed up to where they can't deliver, and then they get kind of in a vortex where they can't get anything done because they got too much on their plate. And then you get a customer who goes, well, I've been waiting for 2 years for my guitar. I want my money back. And
Right.
and that's a bad situation, because the luthier doesn't really want to wait that long. He's not intentionally dragging it out and being lazy. It's just he got caught in over his head.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this so long. I've been in that boat, a few times. And so if I make a bunch of bodies and make a bunch of neck blanks and fingerboard blanks and stuff like that, then when a customer puts on a guitar, I can knock one out in a month, and have it in his hands. And that way it's a lot easier for me to do it that way. And the other thing with building custom guitars, there's just like two kinds of customers really. There's the kind of customer who comes to you and says, hey, I want your greatest guitar. Do it. And you like that guy. And then you have the other guy who kind of sees you as sort of their personal guitar guru tech.
Yeah.
And they dream up their dream guitar in their head. And they go, yeah, I've been dreaming about this guitar my whole life. And then they come to you with this huge dream of their ultimate guitar. And then once you start the process, it's a daily thing where they're calling you, what if we do this? Or how about if we change this? And it's just like this constant thing. And they don't really see, in the end result, they just see them as your special guy to give them something that's 1% better than they could have bought at Guitar Center. And those are the hardest customers to work for. They dread that situation. I'd much rather have somebody go, you're the luthier genius.
Yeah,
make your best guitar for me. You know what you're doing. And I want this trim or that trim. That's neither here nor there. But you get the guys that go, yeah, I want you to build me a Les Paul with a fender neck, or I want you, or they come up with these weird concepts in their head, and they want you to realize it for them.
Yeah.
And they've never designed a guitar. They've never sat there and ground on frets for 3 months and glued. They don't understand the processes, and to them, something that might take 5 minutes is no different than something that may take 5 weeks. In terms of labor, in their heads, it's the same.
Yeah.
And so that is the hardest customer to deal with. I much rather want a person to buy something that I built because of the way I build it, and to me that's, it's
Yeah. And then also with the Luthier Academy, I know there's some information on that on your website, but how's that been, during the COVID situation? What's the future of that look like?
It's been on hiatus during the COVID.
Sure.
And I hope to move it forward, and I haven't decided. I might build a little shop here in Colorado and do the Luthier Academy here. And so going forward, so I haven't really sorted that out yet. I have the facility there, but I have so much work going on there. I don't really have the rooms for a bunch of students right now in the shop. And so I might do that here. There's another Luthier school here in Parker. I might even try to get a job teaching at that school. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But I'd like to keep the Luthier school going because it's good. I like teaching and I like working with younger people, and it's fun to teach the luthier skills to somebody when they are learning them, especially when you see them accomplish, and move forward on it. It's really nice to see that, see them get the skills and get it, learn them,
Yeah. Wonderful. And then what do you, what's the next steps for Baxendale Guitars? What can people expect moving forward?
Well, you can expect a lot more harmony conversions and K conversions and remanufactured guitars. We want to really promote the green aspect.
Yeah.
We want to expand our dealerships, and expand our production levels. And if we can get to where we can do 300 guitars a year, I think that's our current goal right now, is to get to that level. And 2 years ago, it was 100 guitars a year. We were trying to get to that level. So now we're trying to get up to 300 guitars a year. So I think that if we can just slowly inch that up, and at the same time, we're trying to improve the remanufacturing processes as well. we tried, we've got methods that we try all the time to try and improve that, and we've got some new techniques that we're getting ready to try in this next round. And so that's kind of where we're going with it, I think. And then we still have a full repair facility in the shop, but we kind of separate the service work from the remanufacturing work. So when the guitars come in, they separate and go different directions. And then Dylan Keel has come to our shop from California last year, right at the beginning of the COVID. He's been here a year now, and he's sort of taken over the service aspect, and he does really great work. And so it's really nice to have like him, where I can just depend that the work's done right and to our quality standards all the time, and that just sort of takes a lot of pressure off the rebuilding side, because before he was here, it was sort of, we were trying to build the repairs in the middle of those guitars, and it was just really kind of a struggle too. And so that's helped a lot.
Awesome. Anything else? I'm about ready. I think it's about time for the speed round. Anything else you want to add before we get into that, Scott?
Not really. I mean, one thing I wanted to add to when I was talking about the custom guitars was, all that being said, I built this like crazy Donkey Kong guitar, which I think is pretty spectacular. Sometimes an artist will come in with a concept and then let me go with it, and that's kind of a different scenario than the guy who's calling me every other day going, what if we do this, or I want this and that and that. He just sort of, we came up with this weird concept, and then he let me design it and me build it, and he goes, that's amazing, and that's kind of a different, kind of in between those two things. So that was
let's the artist be the artist and create the product. So
yes, and he's a brilliant artist himself, so he totally got it. So that I think that's part of it. Yeah,
that helps.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, ready for the speed round?
All right. So next thing, we'll just give you some, a quick round of yes or no choices, just to help people that watch, get to know the person we're interviewing a little bit better. So for acoustic guitars, mahogany or rosewood?
Mahogany.
Would you pick a Tweed Deluxe or a Deluxe Reverb?
Oh, that's a tough one, man.
I know.
I can't. I'd say 6 1/2 dozen the other on that. 50-50.
There you go. Les Paul or SG?
SG.
J45 or a D18?
J45.
All right.
Now wait. Depending on the year.
Okay. That's fair.
1940 to 1960 would be a J45. 1930 to 1940 would be a D18.
Nice.
Okay, that's fair.
Anything after 60 doesn't matter to me.
Yep.
There you go. Very important one. Are you a coffee man or a tea man?
Tea man.
All right. Ebony or rosewood boards?
Rosewood.
All right. I've seen from the guitars you built, some are cutaway, some are not. So cutaway, yes or no?
No.
All right. I think I know the answer to this one, but flat top or arch top?
Well, it's really tough. I play both, but I'll have to go with flat top because I build a lot more flat tops.
There you go. Strat or Telly?
For the first half of my life, it was Strat. For the last half of my life, it's Telly.
There you go. Would you prefer a Marshall JTM 45 or a Vox AC30?
AC30.
There you go. And probably the most important one, are you a boots man or a sneakers man?
Sneakers man.
There you go.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much for doing this, man. That was really awesome.
Thank you. It's really good to be with you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Before we wrap up, anything else you wanted to add?
I don't know. Back to the Strat Telly thing.
Sure.
when I was about 19 years old, I found a 59 Strat and I traded a almost brand new 335 straight up for it.
Yeah.
And I played nothing but Strats until the mid '90s, and I owned a bunch of Strats. I had a 59 and a 54, and I had a bunch of other different Strats. I built some Strats and everything, and then I built this one guitar that was a hybrid. It was sort of like a Tele. It's like my Cooleycaster. It was the first Cooleycaster kind of guitar.
Cool.
And but the pickups were like a Strat, and it had a Strat bridge on it and Strat whammy, but it was shaped like a Tele. But the bridge pickup was a Tele bridge pickup on it.
Cool.
And that guitar was my transition, and I gigged for 2 years with that guitar, and then I bought a Tele, and I've never played a Strat since then. I've only played, I've played other guitars besides Strats or Teles, but I've pretty much only played Teles after that. And I've got like 5 Teles now at B-Bender Tele that I play a lot. And so the Strat Tele thing is kind of is an interesting part of me.
I think a lot of us go through that. I
that
fight that battle myself.
Yeah. I'm in the Tele portion of my life right now, I think.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Strats are more versatile, but the Teles have that one magic thing that Strats can't touch. But the Strats being so versatile, they've also been so overused, and that sound is become so passé. You know, in the 70s, everybody was playing Les Pauls and 335. That Strat tone was different, you know, but then in the 80s and 90s, it just became on everything, you know, and so to me, that's what I thought was the Strat tone just got too overused. And so when I pick up a Strat, I like how it feels and everything, but when I play it, the sound's just not like it doesn't do what it did for me back in 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's fair.
For some reason.
Yeah, makes sense.